Some leaders leave footprints, others leave libraries. You're tuning into the Authors on Mission podcast, where industry giants become literacy legends. In every episode, we talk with authors who turn their brilliance into books that transform lives. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Welcome to your authorship experience. Every mystery has its storyteller, and every storyteller has their own mystery to solve. Today on Authors on Mission podcast, we're diving into the world of crime fiction with somebody who knows the badge and the pen equally well. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission, and today our guest is Rodney Carpentier, an independent author who's recently self-published his mystery novel, Our Lady of the Overlook, in October 2024 with nearly 19 years of experience in law enforcement. Rodney brings authentic insights from small-town policing into a gripping story that spans 4 decades. His journey from cop to author was not an overnight success, but a midnight revelation in 2022 when he finally pushed him to bring his story to life. So, listeners, whether you're a CEO, a consultant, or a thought leader ready to share your message, you're in the right place, because today's episode will show you how real-world experiences can be transformed into compelling fiction that resonates with readers. Keep listening to discover Rodney's path from protecting communities to publishing his first novel. And without further ado, Rodney, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Danielle. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, it's an honor to have you. I always love speaking with mystery novelists. I think it's, just a fresh take on things. It's always very exciting. And especially, it's going to be very interesting to talk about the fact that you're drawing from kind of your own experiences when creating this book, in a way, to an extent. So I'm excited to dive in.
Perfect.
Yeah, I spoke a bunch about your past and your experiences, 19 years in law enforcement. So what motivated you to transform your experiences into the written word?
So I started out as wanting to be a writer of some sort. I have a bachelor's degree in English. I studied literature, and back then I really wanted to be Ernest Hemingway or F. Scott Fitzgerald. And trying to write at that level, I just found that wasn't me. And then I got married when I was young and needed to have some kind of a career. So I found myself interested in law enforcement. I started as a correction officer for the state of New York. Then I took a test, became a sheriff's deputy, and from there I've worked patrol. I've been an investigator. Currently, I'm a first line supervisor or a sergeant, and in about 20 days or so, I'm going to be promoted to the rank of lieutenant. So I've had a vast career. I've seen so many different things, and I'm sure we'll get into kind of my inciting incident back in 2022, but I just had this bug in me, and it kind of took this inciting incident to really kind of bring forth the desire in the past of wanting to become a writer and wanting to put some ideas down and be a storyteller.
Well, thanks for sharing that. I always love hearing when authors, they always want to be a writer and they finally get to do it at some point in their lives, and they're finally sparked by that inspiration. You mentioned yourself, you had that moment in 2022. I do want to shed some light onto that. What was that moment?
So it was kind of a crossroads in my life. My father had passed away about a month before this. So May of 2022, almost exactly 3 years ago, probably just a little short of 3 years ago, I was working a double. I was working the afternoon shift and I stayed on to the overnight shift. And so I'm pretty tired, kind of losing it a little bit. And 2 o'clock in the morning hits, and trying to stay awake, trying not to, conk out on the desk. And at night happened to be extremely, we don't like to use the word in law enforcement, but it was very quiet. Wasn't a lot going on. The radio was silent, and I'm sitting at my desk. And this idea popped in my head. And that idea was, what if someone knew that they were adopted, grew up as an adopted child, then went to go search for their real parents, their birth parents, and this person found out that their mother was the unknown victim of a cold case homicide that had never been solved. And what would that do to that person? And needing something to kind of, stimulate my brain, I started, writing notes and kind of creating the the basic idea of this story, and it just really kind of excited me. And I mentioned that my father had just passed away. My mother predeceased him by about 6 years at that point. So, I don't know, maybe that idea of being an orphan, even though I was, almost 40 years old at the time, this idea of I'm not having that identity anymore kind of stuck with me. And my dad accomplished a lot in his life, but I felt like there were some regrets that he didn't get to do. And I said, well, I've always wanted to be a writer. You have a fresh new idea, and mysteries are where it's going to be. So go.
Right. Well, hey, I think it's really good that you're drawing from your own experiences in that way, especially because in your book, your main character, Mike Ellis, kind of has a similar situation going on. He's also working in the shadow of somebody also who was an established law enforcement figure, similar to how you mentioned your father was also working in law enforcement. Did you draw upon, your own personal experiences to that extent, or was it inspired by something else?
Well, I guess I just correct that. No, my father actually didn't work in law enforcement. He was
Oh, sorry.
he was more of a blue collar worker. But what he did, he worked in his career for 40 plus years.
Oh.
So what I kind of drew from that was because he was with the same work and with the same company, and when I worked for the same company, I met all his friends, and the same comparisons get made between, hey, your dad's really good at this, and why aren't you? Or kind of the hazing that goes on, especially in more male dominated spaces professionally, where you pick on the new guy, you send him for coffee, you have him go find the tool that doesn't exist, or it. So I drew on those experiences. No, my dad didn't work in law enforcement, but it was kind of the same thing where there was that little bit of a shadow, and trying to understand who my dad was outside of the house and who he was in that workspace. So yes, it's very similar. I just kind of transposed it.
Right, and I do apologize for that slight misunderstanding on my part, but
Yeah.
I see how it can translate, regardless of the field that you're in, just kind of, following in your father's footsteps or understanding the new dynamics, being a new person on the team in any new work environment.
Correct.
So, that being said, I think perhaps we can transition a little bit into the setting before we
Sure.
start recording today. I mentioned, the Catskill Mountains. It's a kind of a staple here on the East Coast of the United States. I've been up there myself many times for camping trips, going to different cabins, lots of fun things to do up there. I'm wondering, did you have any personal connections to that setting yourself that made it the perfect backdrop for your story?
So I'm originally from that area. My wife and I moved south and east till we got to the Hudson River, about 30 miles north of New York City. So that's where I live now. But we're from that upstate area. And approximately about 10 years ago, we started hiking. There are 35 mountains in the Catskills that are over 3,500 feet. And there's a group that, you can join as long as you do all 35 mountains, plus you have to do 4 of them again in the winter. So we kind of made this as a couple's goal, and we started working on that. So we were going up there seasonally. We started, like I said, about 10 years ago, where we did 2 mountains, during the weekend. And then the next spring, as soon as it got nice again, we did 3 mountains over a weekend. And then before you know it, we were going up there constantly. So again, like you said, camping, we camped at all the different places because the Catskills are very far flung, and it spans over 3 or 4 counties. It's probably hundreds and hundreds of miles. So you're kind of staying all over the place in the different areas. But the main place that we stayed was this state campground called North South Lake, which is very close to what's called the town of Hunter, the village of Tannersville. And that whole area is just small town community. It has so much history. That's where you had all the big hotels that people stayed at in the late 1800s and early 1900s. It's very fashionable. Presidents stayed up there. So it's got all this very rich history. And of course, the views aren't terrible either. You can go to all these different places and look out into the Hudson Valley, or you can look out into where there are more mountains, and it's gorgeous. And especially you go up, during foliage season, which obviously is extremely popular. It is just beautiful. And also being at some of the remote places. I think one of the things I've picked up on reading a lot of mystery novels and reading about a lot of how mystery writers think, you're always thinking, where can I hide a body? Where can a body be found? And unfortunately, trails and stuff like that, there are plenty of places that are very, very remote, because some of the trails to these mountains they're not marked trails always. There may be herd paths and things like that where people have just kind of created a path over time, but they're not on a map anywhere. And you can kind of wander and use your compass to go to these places. So there's a lot of places for mystery to kind of unfold.
I think that's so cool. So I kind of imagine you out there, imagining exactly how you're going to plot everything out as you're hiking along with your wife, kind of exploring these areas. Am I seeing that correctly? Were you kind of like on writer's mode as you were hiking some days?
Not again, because the idea came to me after we may have accomplished our goal at that point. I'm trying to think back off the top of my head, but again, yes.
You were thinking back at least, and maybe looking at old pictures or something.
Yeah, my wife is a lot faster hiking than I am, and she doesn't slow down for me. So yes, there is a lot of downtime when you're on a 7 or 8 mile hike, climbing a mountain, trying to keep your mind off of, oh my Lord, how many more feet do I have to climb? And yes, so I won't say specifically this story came out in that, but there was a lot of downtime to think. And when we go hiking now, obviously I'm thinking about these things also. Yes. So you are 100% correct that there is a lot of time. I don't typically hike with music and all this other stuff. It's, I'm trying to take in everything, but yeah, my mind's running around like, how could I do this? How could I do that?
Right. And kind of drawing on that, the title of the book itself, Our Lady of the Overlook, it does refer to a specific location book. Without giving away spoilers, what exactly inspired that? Was it something that you did encounter on your hiking, or maybe something you researched later on?
So there was a specific place that my wife wanted to go to for years, and it wasn't on any of these trails going out to the high peaks, as they're called. This was kind of adjacent to the North-South Lake campground. And she mentioned a number of times she wanted to go out there, and for some reason we just never did. So for me, it kind of became this, well, what does it look like? And it's called the Palinville Overlook. So I kind of had my own imaginings, and when I wanted to set up the background of the cold case murder, which happens 40 years in the past, and I said, well, that would be really cool if, okay, maybe not cool, kind of scary to be out hiking one day and you're out at this beautiful site and there is a dead body there. So that's kind of where it was. I've since been there multiple times. I took my own personal trip out there last fall, just to kind of look at where everything was again, to make sure my stuff is somewhat accurate. There's a little bit of license that I take to add some things to kind of build it out, but yeah, it is based on this specific overlook. And then at the bottom of that overlook is the parking area, which also, like you said, no spoilers, plays and it plays an important part in later in the book.
Understood. Yeah. So really cool though that you're able to kind of, combine all these things, come up with this setting, and really embed it in the plot too. And speaking a little bit about the plot, perhaps we should speak of that a little bit.
Sure.
First off, your book does tackle 2 murder cases separated by 4 decades. So can you perhaps shine a little bit of light on that? And also, from a writer's standpoint, did you encounter any challenges weaving 2 different timelines together so coherently?
I'll take the first question first. So the separation of 4 decades is Mike Ellis, who is a brand new police officer. He's trying to learn how to do everything. And again, it gets into the relationship with him and his father, and the kind of the shadow he's living in, and the secretive nature that his father had. So he's working, then a podcast host comes into the story and basically tells Mike that his dad was involved in this murder from 40 years ago. So Mike's learning this the same time as the reader. And so now Mike is kind of going down this rabbit hole of trying to find out information. And the more he looks, the more he finds that it's a very forgotten thing. Then he happens to kind of stumble upon his own murder case. And now the parallels start to begin because his father was a brand new police officer in the 80s when he is the first responding officer to the cold case. And now Mike is now in modern times, and he's a rookie responding to his, responding to a murder case early in his career. So now the parallels are starting to begin, and he starts to think, well, maybe there is some kind of bigger connection. And it kind of forces him to start digging more and more into things. And he's actually able to crack the case wide open and actually move stuff forward for the first time in a very long time.
Understood. And there must have been a lot of plotting on your end, correct? I'm kind of imagining like a big storyboard here with, all the different plot points intersecting. It must be hard, from years spanning two different stories.
It's not really a flashback story. It's more of a trying to uncover things. So again, I came up with this idea, and then I had to actually learn how to write it. Because again, I went to college and, I took some creative writing. I was more interested in reading than I was writing back then. And so I had to start taking out all my hero's journey books and learn, I had to learn how to plot it. So where the books kind of failed me, I started looking again, podcasting, and I found a ton of very good podcasts and YouTube videos with people who are trained in book coaching and things like that. So I had to learn how to do this. And I actually found the thing that worked for me was the Save the Cat method, which is typical. There are a number of books on it, but it's usually for, it was originally for screenplays and for movies. And that's how I kind of think. So I started using that to actually plot out my scenes. And as I did, the story kind of evolved from there. And originally there were two timelines, and I actually cut one completely out. Like I said, the original kind of idea was about this person finding out that their mother was a cold case homicide victim. And I cut the entire backstory out on her, and she comes in much later in the novel. So I actually had to cut an entire part out because I had to decide whose story it was. And from my perspective, it was easier and better to tell Mike's story originally, and then build in the other character.
Understood. And, for all the writers out there listening today, we do have to be prepared for these sorts of things, for restructuring our plans and modifying things as we begin writing. You never know the direction a story might take. But it's really good to know that you were able to draw upon resources from podcasts and YouTube videos. And, anybody listening today, that's an amazing thing to do. You're listening to our show right now for some writing tips. There's a tremendous array of just resources out there for anybody who wants to write. So
Absolutely.
You're able to do that, Rodney. Being that you did come from law enforcement, you had to learn a lot about the writing process, kind of going to a new career. I know you mentioned you do have a degree in English, but there's definitely a learning curve in there. I'm wondering if you can offer any more tips and advice for aspiring authors who are perhaps just getting into it or just starting off. It's a whole nother, learning path you have to go through, correct?
Correct. And again, I listen to a variety of different, shows and videos and different coaches. And I still do, even after accomplishing releasing a novel, I'm still constantly clicking on videos to see, how can I get better? So my advice for anyone that's getting into writing now is really finding the way that your brain works. There's the constant pantser versus plotter. I've been to a number of conferences also, and there's, kind of this dividing line between the two groups of writers. And for the first book, Our Lady of the Overlook, I was very, very dedicated to plotting and to very, okay, I need to get to this point at this point. How do I get there? But, I needed to hit these different points where I just completed the sequel, and it's in the editing process now. And that was a lot more. There was more pantsing in that one where I was kind of like, okay, where do I go now? And I know where I want to get to a couple of scenes from now, but what can I do to build up and to give more context to the first book? And how can I kind of start, looking towards the third book and doing more of the setups and payoffs in the middle of that. So it became a much more complicated thing in the second book, but you just got to figure out the way that your brain works, and again, having that dedicated time to actually working on whatever you're working on is another huge thing. I'm a sprinter when it comes to writing. A lot of people are like, oh, I need to hit so many words in a day. I need to do this. I need to do that. Or, I'm dedicating the next 15 minutes to writing. I set a timer on my phone. I tell my family, and like, hey, I'll be back in 15 minutes, and I'll write for 15 minutes, and whatever comes out, comes out. And one of the things I really teach myself was not to go back. Whatever's written is written. And, there's a whole editing process to go back and kind of fix that stuff up. So that's how I kind of do things. I kind of try to do spurts and have a plan, but also be open-minded enough to say, all right, I need to take this in a different direction, or, my ideas evolved. Because I'll be honest, the only one who knows how the trilogy is going to end is my daughter, because she's 11, so she's read parts, or I've read parts to her, but she always asks me, well, who did it? And I'll tell her, but also some of that's changed, and she may not even know that yet. So there's there may be some surprises for me coming up too.
Well, first off, I think it's really nice that you have, somebody to show your book to and your stories, your daughter and you. That's something you can both talk about and experience together. And I'm sure she gets just so excited hearing and reading the next parts of it. So that's something I definitely recommend to our listeners too, is, having somebody to beta read your chapters, to be excited about it. And not only offers you feedback, but also accountability to keep writing and not to fall off or, get a little bit lazy with it. So it's really good to know your daughter's there on your side and helping you through the process too. Do you happen to have a copy of your book with you by any chance? I always like to ask.
Of course I do.
Do you mind holding it up for all of us?
Sure.
I was going to mention before to everybody, the cover is really beautiful. It shows that overlook right there in the Catskills that we were talking about before. And I do think it has a lot of mystery, just the way the clouds are kind of circling around everything. Would you like to speak a little bit more about the cover, Simon?
Absolutely, 100%. For all my professionals, because again, I'm independent, so I don't have a publisher making all these decisions for me. So, which is, if you don't want, we won't have to get into the independent publishing route just yet, but I really liked the fact that I was able to go find the professionals, and I used Readsy, which is a fantastic site. There's a lot of accountability there. So I went looking for a cover artist a little more than a year ago. Mm-hmm. And I found a nice woman in, I think she's based out of the Carolinas, named Dana Matthias Steele, and her company is called dearlycreative.com. And I gave her what I was looking for. I gave her the synopsis of the book, and I gave her a couple of ideas of existing book covers, and it took her a little while, but she sent me 2 ideas, and I got them while I was on vacation last June with my family, and we were walking around in Salem the day it came out, Salem, Massachusetts, and I got it. I was really excited to get it. So I opened it up and I saw this cover, and I was like, oh, that's it. And I saw the other cover. The other cover was still good, but this was it. And I showed it to my wife and my daughter, and they said, yeah, it's perfect. I said, I agree. Cool. Good decision. So she was fabulous to work with. She knocked it out of the park right away. And again, when it came around to starting to plan the second book, which will be coming out the end of August this year, I went on Readsy to just kind of make it through. But the only person I asked for a quote from was her. I said, you knocked it out of the park the first time. I'm really interested to see what you got the second time. And I don't have a proof of that cover yet, but it is out there on the internet. If you look me up at my website or on Facebook and things like that, I have put it out in the world. She knocked it out of the park again. Like, she is, 2 for 2 for me. So the cover is, everyone keeps saying that that's the way to go. you need to have a great cover, and she did a perfect job. So if you're getting towards that, I highly recommend her.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, whole experience with us. It is something that a lot of writers are curious about doing. They don't know how to do it exactly. Like, I'm not an artist, I'm a writer. Where do I go? Where do I turn? That's an excellent tip for everyone to follow. And you did mention book number 2 is coming out later this year. Where exactly can we go to find updates about this book, to stay in the know, to purchase it when it does come out? How can we get in touch?
Yeah, so my website, RL Carpentier, that's TIER at the end, and then writer.com. So rlcarpentierwriter.com. I have information on there. I'm starting the pre-order process. So if you go to the shop page, I have to update the main page. But if you go to the shop page, you'll see Our Lady of the Overlook is there, because we're celebrating the 6-month anniversary of that. So there's currently a discount on Our Lady of the Overlook, and that is a signed personalized copy. And then right next to that is an opportunity to pre-order the second book, which is called Quiet Whispers of the Overlook. And I'm trying to get that onto Amazon also, so I can start working there. That is the mission for after our discussion today, is to get on there and get all that stuff squared away. So that's the best way to do it. And while you're on my website, you can sign up for my newsletter. I do it every week. You'll get it. I try to get it out 7:45 every Sunday morning, and I talk about my writing process, but I also talk about just life in general. And I always have a section where I'm updating where we're at and how things are coming out. So that's the best ways to kind of follow me.
Well, perfect. And we're going to put all of those links into the description box of this podcast today. So if you're listening, go ahead and click on over. And Rodney, I'm wondering, do you have any last bits of advice or pieces of wisdom for our audience today?
I find it interesting, and I've seen a couple of YouTube videos recently, or listened to some podcasts where they, talk about writing what you know. And I think that it's important to have a basis in what you're writing, but also stretch yourself to kind of learn more about a topic so that you feel excited. Because I found with writing from the perspective of a police officer, I take a lot for granted. And when I had Our Lady of the Overlook edited the first time, there were a lot of notes on there about, okay, well, what does this mean? Or you got to explain this a little bit more. So you have to watch yourself being so ingrained in a certain topic that people don't necessarily understand what you're talking about. So write what you know, but also kind of stretch that out a little bit and try to learn something new, so that you're teaching as much as you're teaching people what you're learning, and kind of bringing those aspects in there. I'm doing a lot of research for a nonfiction book right now that is basically takes place an event that happened where I live now in the lower Hudson Valley. And I'm learning a ton of stuff about the town that I live in, the village that I live in, and how that was in the early 1980s around when this event happened. So always try to learn something also. Write what you know, but also find a way to stretch that and to kind of involve people more.
That's a really great tip, because we all have heard the write what you know technique, but you're right, take it a step farther. Find something else to add into it that you didn't already know. Make it a learning experience for yourself, and that's only going to add to the value of your book. So
absolutely.
And thanks for all the other tips mentioned in this podcast today. I think we had a great conversation talking about not only Our Lady of the Overlook, but really some amazing strategies for writing and kind of balancing life and writing and just learning the process throughout. So thank you so much for all of this. It's been a pleasure.
It's been I had a great time, Danielle. Thank you for the conversation.
Always. And, to all of our listeners, if this conversation sparked your own author journey, remember, your knowledge deserves to be shared. Rodney's story shows us that whether in law enforcement, healthcare, education, or any other field, your experiences can become the foundation for powerful storytelling. Be sure to join us next time as we continue helping leaders like you transform their knowledge into impact. I'm Danielle Hutchinson, your host and Chief Creative Officer at Authors on Mission. Be sure to check the links in the description box to find out more about Rodney's writing and stay up to date with the new release. And until then, keep writing, keep leading, and keep inspiring. Have a great day, everyone.
This is Danielle Hutchinson reminding you that somewhere, someone needs the book that only you can write. Visit authorsonmission.com to start your legacy. Until next time, keep leading, keep inspiring, and keep thinking in chapters. Have a great day.